What's going on, CDL fans, and welcome back to another episode of Champs Sunday with Jake Maverick. Today, as you can see, won by the title, we're going to be going over my top 15 players of the 2024 calendar year, which I think is going to be pretty fun. It was definitely tough to make that list. I'm also going to go over a little bit of the minor tournament, which is coming up in just over a week at this point. It is on January 10th. Then we're going to round it out with the Ask Jake segment. I got 3 questions from the previous video. If you want your question to be featured in the next episode of this next Sunday, make sure to drop it down below in the comments. But first off, I hope you guys had a happy holiday. If you celebrate whatever it is, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you guys celebrate throughout that past week, I hope you guys had a good holiday. And then obviously we have New Year's coming up in just like a day, right? I'm recording this and posting this on the 30th. So pretty interesting, fun holiday season. I hope you guys enjoyed yourselves, got what you wanted under the Christmas tree for Christmas. And yeah, man, let's talk about some CDL stuff. We've had this break so far. We got a little bit more of a break, so hopefully this content helps pull you through the break. Also, check out the new LA Thieves hoodie. Yup. Shout out to parents for the Christmas gift. But yeah, let's talk about first. I want to actually start off talking about the minor predictions. So this isn't going to be like my full prediction bracket. Sorry, my camera also, it's really bright. My camera keeps like unfocusing on my face. I'm not going to do a full minor prediction. If you want to see that, we're going to be doing it on the Around the CDL podcast, which I do with my 2 co-hosts in the coming week. So definitely stay tuned for that. But what I do want to talk about is sort of the teams I think can win and the potential upsets and finals matchups I think we can see. So it's like kind of a full prediction, but it's not exactly a full prediction. Starting it off, teams I think can win. Honestly, I think there's 4 to 5 teams that can definitely take this. Honestly, probably even more. I think definitely the 4 teams I would say that have the best chance of winning it are going to be Ravens, OpTic, LA Thieves, and Ultra. And a 5th team, honestly, I would throw in there is the Boston Breach, because I just think their SND and their teamwork looked really good, especially in Game 5s. I think any of those teams can for sure win this. Now, can a team like, I have it pulled up on my second monitor, could a team like Cloud9 have some good form, maybe Civ and Attach start playing better, win? Sure. Could a team like Atlanta FaZe get back to what we were used to seeing them and win? Absolutely, right? Could a team like Rocker maybe make a run and win it? For sure. I definitely think there's a bunch of teams that could win, but I think those 4 to 5 are the most likely to potentially win. In terms of upsets, in round 1, I think Miami over FaZe, if that's even considered an upset at this point, right? Because FaZe have obviously looked worse than Miami, I think we could say. Miami over FaZe, I think, is a possible upset depending on what phase we get after this break. If they come out and play the way they did the past 2 weeks, I definitely think Miami can win. If FaZe regrouped, had a good holiday, got maybe the chemistry back going, or maybe the chemistry was great, I really don't know, but got something going again, maybe FaZe can come out and take this, and it's not really a surprise. I think that's probably more likely, but we will see. And then another upset, honestly, in round 1 is LAG over Rocker. It might not seem like an upset, like on paper when you look at the rosters, but LAG is yet to win, and Rocker are 2-2. So technically, this would be an upset. I do think LAG could come out. Same thing with FaZe. After this break, I don't really know what we're going to get from LA Gorillas, LA Gorilla mates, and we're going to see what we can get from them. And then in round 2, a potential upset, I think this is really like the only big potential upset in round 2 would be Cloud9 over Ravens. If C9 win their round 1 versus Surge, and then go up against the Royal Ravens, I really think we could see this. For one, it's obviously an upset because C9 are, I think they're 1-3 and Ravens are 4-0. But also, C9 almost swept Ravens a couple weeks ago, and then Ravens reverse swept them. So I really think this is a potential upset for sure to see C9, if they make it to the second round, take down the Royal Ravens. But I also do think Ravens have a really good chance of making the finals. And talking about potential final matchups, I think there's a bunch of them, right? Like, I really think this could be a whole load of them. I think Ravens from the top side of the bracket versus either LAT or Ultra is the most likely, in my opinion, from the bottom side, LAT and Ultra. I also do think OpTic could, of course, make it through the top side of the bracket. I think it's going to be either LA Thieves or Ultra from the bottom side, almost guaranteed, right? Unless we get a FaZe, back in prime form FaZe. I really think LA Thieves or Ultra are almost guaranteed to make it to the finals. And to be honest, even as a Thieves fan myself, I, of course, like our odds, and I think we can for sure win this. I do think Ultra have a really good chance at this because Ultra look really good in Hardpoint, but also really, really good in Search and Destroy, which is a spot that Thieves, I think, have a pretty good SND record, but if you've watched the matches, you've seen just how close some of these SNDs have been. So I really think Ultra have a great chance. And then Ravens just look good all around, but of course, OpTic, as they continue to get better with HAVOK, should be a threat. And then even Boston Breach, I think, could be a threat. So you guys let me know what you have as your finals matchup for the minor tournament in the comments. If I had to give you a finals matchup myself, I'm going Ravens Thieves. That's what I'm going to say. I might be a little bit biased in there, but I'm going to go Ravens Thieves as my finals matchup as of right now. Maybe I'll change my mind as I think about it a little bit more, but that is what I'm going to go with. But now let's talk about the best players of the 2024 calendar year. So this is all encompassing, obviously, last season of Modern Warfare 3, because that was the majority of 2024, but also thinking about what's happened recently in Black Ops 6 for the first 2 weeks of games. Very, little consideration of BO6 versus MW3, because BO6 has been 2 weeks. MW3 was 7 months of the year. But this is essentially, the way I sort of looked at this was like, almost like the Ballon d'Or. If you watch soccer or football, whatever you call it, it really doesn't matter to me. If you watch soccer or football, the Ballon d'Or is typically a top 30 of the best players in the world for the entire year, right? So I didn't do a top 30 because that would be way harder to rank. I mean, this was hard enough. And it's very focused on, like, if you're on a winning team and you also performed really well, you're up higher in the rankings. So it's a whole mixture of individual performance as well as team performance in Ballon d'Or rankings. So that's kind of the approach I took to this. Now, the exact order of my list is not going to be perfect. You might think the guy I have at number 11 should be at number 9, or the guy I have at number 6 should be at number 5. Like, it's not that deep at the end of the day, right? The exact rankings is very, very difficult to do. So if you disagree with some of that, I mean, you could feel free to let me know in the comments, but hopefully you don't get too upset about some of the exact rankings. Because like I said, this was pretty hard to rank based on an entire year. Now, it is almost like a top 20 because I do have 5 honorable mentions for you. These are not in any particular order, but my 5 honorable mentions, not to talk about them too much, I have Attach, Envoy, Skies, Beans, and Abuza. I think all 5 of these guys had really great moments last year. Some of them have been really good to start BO6, like Beans, like Envoy. Some of them have been slower to start BO6, like Attach, let's say, or even Abuza. So, but I think all of these guys were pretty good in the year of 2024. But I think the 15 ahead of them, I would say, have been better. All right, let's start it off now with number 15. And at number 15, I have Nero. I actually think Nero last year was potentially one of the best, or a top 3 SMG outside the top 4 teams. I think he was really, really good in Respawn, especially in Hardpoint. I mean, he's always getting kills. He's always pushing the pace. He also had a high KD in Hardpoint. I think he had like a 1.1 in Hardpoint last season in MW3. Given a fast-paced SMG player like that having a high KD is pretty impressive. And so far in Black Ops 6, Nero's also been the best player on the rocker and has started out pretty strong, basically picking up where he left off last season. So I definitely think Nero is a player that I've been high on for years. Like, ever since he came into the league, I've always said he's one of the most underrated guys in the league. And I think he continues to prove that. I think he was the best, well, the most, like, if you take out like Hydra, who we didn't think was going to be a free agent, I think Nero was like the best free agent sub on the market, right? No one thought Hydra was really going to be bought out. So I think Nero was like the best free agent sub on the market coming into BO6. He lands on rocker. He's been playing well. I have him at number 15. Then at number 14, this is another guy that's hard to rate because last year he had some really high highs and some low lows. And this season he started out pretty poor in BO6, but I have Sib at number 14. Like I said, he was good last year. He was really good towards the end of the season. I mean, he was sometimes at times the best player on NYSL last season, even with a roster of Hydra on it. Sorry, I keep going like this to get my camera to focus on my face. I think Sib at times was the best player on New York Subliners last season. He definitely had some rough patches throughout the year, and he's had a rough patch to start this season, but they did, of course, win a major. They made a grand finals at Champs, and I think Sib is just one of those guys that when he's in form, he is one of the best shooters. He's got really good movement for an AR. I really think he's a guy that hopefully picks it up in BO6, but for now is at number 14. Then we go to number 13, another guy that's hard to rank, because last year, statistically, he didn't have the craziest numbers. Like, if you looked at his stats, you didn't really think, like, oh, this guy was frying, especially considering everyone else on his team was really frying, and he even had the MVP on his team. This guy at number 13 is Abizi. And Abizi, of course, Major 2 champion, EWC champion, a lot of great moments, great streaks versus OpTic Texas. I'm sure many of the OpTic fans, I just gave you nightmares thinking back to PTSD. But I think Abizi was pretty underrated last year. He was one of the better players at impacting the map and helping enable his teammates, right? Like he is every single season. This year he started out decent. I know FAZE haven't played well, but the subs at the very least have been good, right? aBeZy and SCUMP. I think the ARs have been the slower ones of the two in terms of how they started out the year. Overall, I just think we all know what we're getting from aBeZy. You could probably even put him higher on this list because of everything he does that you probably don't see on the scoreboard. But going up to number 12, we have one of the world champions. We have Kenny. He's another guy that, like aBeZy, does a lot of the stuff you don't see on the scoreboard, although has some big maps in hardpoint, some big maps in control. Has been a little lackluster in search and destroy, and has started the year in BO6 a little bit. Not as good as we'd expect from Kenny, but of course, with roster changes and things like that, you know, Kenny's just trying to help his teammates be the best versions of himself and probably, you know, forgetting to pull up his gun and shoot back all the time because he might be in his head about helping his teammates. But we all know how good Kenny can be, and I'm really not worried about him in BO6. I think in 2024, right, winning 2 events, one of those being a world championship, you got to have Kenny in a top 15 players of the year. Then we go to number 11, and we have Kenny's old teammate, Draza. Like I said, for aBeZy, they won 2 events. I think Draza in MW3 was one of the better players. I think he was probably right around top 10, if not better for sure, in Modern Warfare 3. He's not been good to start BO6, which did kind of dock him a little bit of a point. Honestly, I probably would have had him a spot higher. I would have flipped my 11 and 10, but I kept Draza at 11 simply because he has not been good to start the year and is also not really great in search and destroy individually last season. But at number 10, now we break into the top 10. This is a guy I said I'd switch with Draza if we weren't looking at BO6 at all. Number 10, I have Gwyn. I think Gwyn has, for one, potentially been a top 1, top 2 player in BO6 to start. Last year, of course, Rookie of the Year. I mean, it's a great accolade to win, right? Only one person wins it every season, and it is Gwyn in the case of last year in MW3. People talked about Gwyn, he wasn't good on LAN this past season. All these sorts of things. I think he was actually pretty good. If you look at the stats, he was just as good on LAN like he was online. Obviously playing many less matches on LAN than online, so there's potential for those stats to go up or down depending on how he would have done if they played more. Didn't really have any LAN success yet in his career, but I think Gwyn is proving. Last year, I think he proved that he could definitely be like one of the stars in the league. I think this year, to start BO6, it's only been 4 matches, but he's proving he could potentially be a superstar one day in this league, especially as some of the other older SMG players start to fade out. I really think Gwyn could look to fill those shoes on a top team in the coming, few seasons. But in terms of the 2024 calendar year, I'm putting Gwyn at number 10, which might be a little bit high for some people, but I think he had a pretty underrated year. And of course, winning Rookie of the Year is, a trophy that not many people are going to get. Then we get into number 9, and we got my guy, Dan Ghosty. Last year, he was undoubtedly the MVP of the LA Thieves. He really kept this team alive the entire season. EWC was definitely his worst event by far. It was pretty much his only bad event. But this guy had moments throughout the entire season where he was just frying, popping 2 or 3 pieces in moments and maps where you really think it's over for LAT. And he just continues to, I feel like, get better and make the right plays. We obviously know his comms are really good. We know he's a good teammate. I think Dan Ghosty just had a really solid season. If he had the team he has in BO6 all year last year, he'd probably be even higher on this list. And this is, of course, no diss to the LA Thieves guys. Nasty, Joe Deceives, and Kremp. I love all those guys. But Ghosty was definitely MVP last season, right? And there's no doubt about that. He definitely is in my top 10. Now we go to number 8, a guy who has had a bit of, something, whatever you want to call it, controversy, news, things going around. We have Pred at number 8. Despite everything that's happened so far to start the BO6 season, Pred was undoubtedly one of the best players in Modern Warfare 3 and throughout 2024. Even when he was playing the first 2 matches of this year, he looked really, really good, other than in Search and Destroy, but, it is what it is. Pred, I think, was one of the best players last year. I think he should have won MVP at Champs, in my opinion. I think he was better than Shotzzy over the whole tournament, and especially in the Grand Finals, but either one of them could have won it. I think they both definitely deserved it. If you could have given co-MVPs, I think it would have went to both of them. I just think Pred, there's not really a ton to say. I mean, the guy was a monster in respawns. He had moments in SNDs, although he, of course, had some bad SNDs. I have him at number 8. Then we get to number 7. This is one people might think I'm high on, but I'll explain myself as we go. And remember, like I said, this is like a Ballon d'Or sort of style ranking. Number 7, I have Kleenex. I know people might think that's crazy to have Kleenex over the likes of Pred or some of the other guys, but Kleenex won Major 1 MVP last season. you might have thought, like myself, that Scrap probably should have won it, but Kleenex did, in fact, win Major 1 MVP last year, getting the accolade, of course, winning the event. This season so far started out being a top 5 player easily, in my opinion. I think he's probably a top 3 to 4 MVP guy right now if the season were to end after 4 weeks, which, of course, sounds crazy if the season were to end after 4 weeks, but just using these hypotheticals and talking about how good he's been so far this season, I think Kleenex was really, really good in 2024. I think he had insane moments. I think he definitely had some low moments, of course, but like every player, there is always going to be a bad stage or a bad few matches. So Kleenex at number 7 might be high for some people, but that Major 1 MVP I definitely think adds a lot of value. Then we get to number 6, and we got none other than Dashy. He was the backbone of OpTic last season. He's been great so far this season. The best AR, I would say, in the game so far this season. I don't even honestly think you could debate that. You might be able to try and throw like Scrap in there or maybe Slasher, but I think Dashy's been the best so far to start the season. And last year was great. Won 2 events, one of those being champs, finally getting his championship ring. I think Dashy just is really adapted to this role on his team really well. And I'm honestly excited to see what he does going forward into 2025. Now we get into our top 5. And at number 5, a guy I already know people are going to say Dashy should have been higher than. But at number 5, I have Celium. I know Celium almost had like a down year in comparison to other years last year, but you got to remember he won MVP at EWC. He was insane at that event. And like I said for Kleenex, an MVP award is something that's only handed out, 5 to 6 times throughout a year, right? There's only a handful of events a season, and winning one of those MVPs not only means you won the event, but you also were the best player on the best team, or at least that's how it's supposed to work, right? So Celium winning the MVP at EWC honestly just pushed him a little bit higher than Dashy. Like I said, I know he had some moments where he definitely trolled, gave up that 1v3 out of Dashy on the Invasion SND. I'm sure we all remember that. But I think Celium had some really big moments. I even think at Major 2 when they won that event, he was exceptional. So I have Celium at number 5. Now we get into our top 4. Last year, these guys were impossible to rank, right? I mean, we all know who the top 4 from MW3 were. Any order you want to put these in, I ultimately wouldn't argue with you. But to be honest, I actually feel pretty good about my top 4 rankings. Number 4, I have Scrap. Only reason he's at number 4 is because he's the only one of these guys to not win any individual hardware, right? He did not win an MVP award at all last year. The 3 above him did. I do think Scrap, honestly, was my MVP of the whole season last year. I think without him, that Ultra team was potentially like a top 6 roster. And he's obviously been good to start BO6. But I think Scrap definitely could have been higher, but he just didn't win an individual MVP award or an accolade like that. So I have him at number 4. At number 3, I do have Hydra, Scrap's new LAT teammate. Still can't believe these guys are on the Thieves. It's going to be exciting to watch them for hopefully years to come. But I do have Hydra at number 3. Of course, they did win one event. He did win the MVP at that event, which was Major 4. Champs Grand Finalist. Hydra, again, another MVP caliber guy last season. Without him, New York Subliners would have been significantly worse. But they did get a top 12 at Major 1, right? Talking about Scrap previously, they didn't get worse than top 4 all of last season. They actually were the most consistent team when you look at average placings. Well, actually, I don't know if it's got to be, right? If you look at average placings, because they didn't get anything worse than a top 4. Every other team got worse than a top 4 at some point last year. So Hydra at number 3, that MVP obviously at Major 4 pushed them above Scrap in my opinion. At number 2, listen, these guys, I think you could swap, the 2 and 1, I think you could swap. But at number 2, I do have Simp. He, of course, won 2 MVP awards last season, Major 2 and the overall season MVP. And, of course, won 2 events. Simp is Simp, right? He's one of the best players in the game year in, year out. He is one of the best players of all time, potentially one of the best subs of all time, maybe the best sub of all time, depending on who you ask and whose list you're looking at. But Simp, I have number 2. And at number 1, I do have Shotzi. 2 MVPs, right? Major 3 and Champs. And I think has been the best player to start Black Ops 6. That also, I really think the BO6 2 weeks was the tiebreaker for me with Shotzi and Simp. You could go either 1-1, either 1-2, but Shotzi's been the best player, I think, so far in Black Ops 6. So I use it as a little bit of a tiebreaker. But both of those players had exceptional years in 2024. Some of the best years we've probably seen in a long time. So those guys, you could swap them however you want, but that is my top 15, almost top 20 with the honorable mentions, players of 2024. Let me know if there's someone you think I left off the list that definitely should have been on it, or any spots you heavily disagree with. But like I said, if you disagree with someone that's 1 or 2 spots lower than maybe they should be or higher than they should be, Hopefully that's not too big of a deal breaker. But now it's time to round out the episode with our Ask Jake segment. I got 3 questions from the previous video. Like I said in the beginning, if you have questions or topics for me to answer in the next video, drop them in the comments down below, and I will pick 3 to 5, depending on how long I think the responses are going to be for next episode. And we're going to start off here with one from my guy, Random. He said, with the rise of the sophomore class looking good in these first 2 weeks, so the sophomore class, which obviously the rookies last year, he said, try to predict the future and speculate where the rookies from the 2024 season will rank all time in the CDL era. So the 2024 season rookies were obviously the ones from last year, highlighted by Gwyn and Abuza and Real and Linz. Where do we think they would rank in the all-time CDL rookie classes? This is definitely tough because if we're trying to speculate and look forward, I actually think, and it might be a hot take, I think this rookie class might have the most players that'll still be in the league a few years from now. I think the rookies from last year, this new sophomore class, has some very stretched talent, right? Like, I definitely think we have like a guy at the top like Gwyn, who I think is undoubtedly the best of those rookies. But I think with all those guys I mentioned, Abuza, Estriel, Gio, Real, Linz, Ophora, and I'm sure there's people, Snoopy, that are Purge, people, probably still missing. I think these guys are some guys that could be in the league for a few years, which is not something we see often from rookies. But what I will say is it's going to be hard to compete with the top talent of previous rookie classes from the CDL era. If you look at 2020, we got guys like Shotzi, Draza, Illy, right? All top talents, all have won rings at this point. 2021, you got guys like Hydra and Insight. Top talents have won events, won a ring in Hydra's case. Pred and Sib in 2022, of course, one's won a ring. They both won events. 2023, you got a guy like Scrap, who of course has won events and has been one of the best players. Even a guy like Ghosty, who has yet to win, but we know how good he can be. I think in terms of top talent, I don't see this sophomore class, the rookie class from last year, competing with some of those guys. But I do think it has some pretty stretched talent that we're going to see in the league for a long time. Next up, from Trust My Legacy, he asked, does OpTic keep HAVOK next year? Or FAZE keep playing rough? Do we get Simp or Abizi or someone else? Obviously, when he says we, I'm imagining he's talking about OpTic. Does OpTic keep HAVOK next year? Obviously, we're predicting the future here, right? So I don't know anything. We got to see how the season plays out. But if I had to venture a guess, I'm going to say no. I don't think OpTic keep HAVOK next season. I do think HAVOK potentially plays good enough that he ends up on a team to start next season for sure. But I do not think OpTic keep HAVOK. I think they're, of course, a landing place to pretty much get anyone they want. If FaZe keep playing rough, does OpTic get Simp or Abizi is an interesting one. I think it's possible. I don't know for sure. Like, I don't know if Simp or Abizi would go to OpTic. Like, I wonder if there's a bit of that OpTic versus FaZe rivalry there where, like, if they were to go to OpTic, I wonder if, like, all the FaZe fans would hate them and they know that, or at least they think that. So I don't know if you would get Simp or Abizi. I mean, if you could get Simp with Shotzi, that would be an insane duo, potentially one of the best duos we've ever seen in the game. Would probably rival the Tiny Terrors in terms of how good they could be. But I don't know if they would go there. You guys let me know in the comments. Do you think Simp or Abizi would be willing to go to OpTic? Obviously, if they go to OpTic, they would get more fans, more money, and even most importantly, probably still be able to win a ton. But I don't know if that rivalry between the two organizations would stop them from going there. Just to add on to this, though, if OpTic do need a replacement for, let's say, HAVOK next season, options I think they could have, right? Obviously, Pred could potentially come back. Maybe someone like Gwyn, like one of these up-and-comers, could look to take that spot. Depending on how LAT season goes, I mean, if we completely flop, maybe Hydra goes to OpTic somehow. You never really know what could happen. I think OpTic should have some decent options, though, after this season going into next year for who they could use to fill in that sub spot if they decide to not keep HAVOK, which, like I said, I would venture they probably won't. And let's round it out now with our last question from Epic Crazy Guy. He asked, do you think Ravens have a chance to win Major 1? And this is a great question because obviously we're 2 weeks into the year. The Ravens arguably look like the best team in the game right now. I mean, they're really, really good in hardpoint. They're really, really good in search and destroy, and they've, of course, been good in control. This team has great teamwork. They seem to really understand the map and how to play together right now. The question is this a case of like peaking too early or just learning the game faster than other teams? Maybe similar to what we saw from the Toronto Ultra last year, where they were undoubtedly, undeniably the best team in the game at Major 1. They, of course, won the event, and then they went on to not win anything else, although they did not get worse on top 4, as we mentioned earlier. To answer the question directly, yes, I do think Ravens can win Major 1. I think Major 1 is one of those events that's really up for grabs for any team because it's so early and, well, it's really not that early in the year. Ultimately, it's at the end of January, so the teams have been playing the game for like 2 to 3 months now. But beginning of the year, first LAN event, I think anything's really possible at this point. A team that is peaking early or learning the game faster could, of course, win. Now, are Ravens going to be this good all year long? I mean, you never really know, right? It's possible, but I really do think they could win Major 1, right? I think similar to what I said for the minor tournament, Major 1 is definitely up for grabs, and I think a lot of teams could potentially win this, right? I think OpTic, LAT, Ultra, Ravens, FAZE, if they come back onto LAN and play well, there's a lot of teams that could pull this one out. So to answer, yes, I do think Ravens could win Major 1. But that's going to do it for this episode of Champs Sunday with Jake Maverick. I appreciate you guys watching or listening. If you're on Spotify, drop a 5-star review. I don't think we have a single Spotify listener. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to upload it just for the sake of uploading it. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, man. If you want to see more CDL content, make sure to sub to the channel. We're right about to hit 7K at the time of recording this. We're at 6998, so we're 2 away from 7,000. And it's almost the new year. So I'm guessing we're going to hit 7K before the new year. So if we did, when you're watching this, thank you a ton. It means the world to me. I cannot wait to continue the grind in 2025. I got a lot of big things planned. So hopefully you guys enjoy what's coming for the channel and a lot more CDL content to come. So thank you guys once again. And hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.